Quarterfinal time is here, people. Welcome back to The Slice, and we've got the men's quarterfinal draw preview and prediction here. I've got my notes, the matchups are set, and they're great. This is seeming like a sure thing to have Tsitsipas versus Djokovic in the final. But there's a lot of unseeded players, guys we didn't expect to be here in the quarterfinals, here to challenge them and see if they can disrupt that. So we're going to go matchup by matchup, look down at their head-to-heads, look at what each player has to do, and I'll give my predictions on who I think is going to make it through to the semifinals of the Australian Open after all of the chaos has gone down for the seeds so far in this tournament. So let's get into it. Here's the slice. Let's go. All right, welcome back to the show, people. I hope you've been enjoying our daily coverage of the Australian Open 2023. I know I've been enjoying doing it, and I've thanked you for subscribing to The Slice and subscribing to the Monday Bagel newsletter if you haven't already. The link is below. It's just a good way to save time and get news when you need it every Monday to your inbox, rankings, gear, Canadian stuff, etc. So thanks for subscribing there. So we got 4 quarterfinal matchups, obviously, and they're a lot different than we might have thought that they would be. So I'm just going to look here. The predicted quarterfinals was this: Nadal versus Medvedev on the top, then Tsitsipas versus Auger-Aliassime, then Djokovic versus Rublev, which we actually do have, then Fritz versus Ruud. Those were the predicted rank or matchups by ranking. And then here's what we actually have. We got Karen Khachanov versus Sebastian Korda. We got Tsitsipas versus Lehechka. We've got Djokovic versus Rublev. And maybe the most surprising of them all, Ben Shelton versus Tommy Paul. That rhymes. Don't come at me. Poet and I didn't know it. So these matchups are intriguing for sure. Interesting. I think, like I said in the intro bit, Tsitsipas versus Djokovic is the most expected final, I would say for sure. But Tsitsipas, every match he's been treating, like I said, with, it seems like he's not taking it for granted. It seems like he could mentally, crumble. He's had some disappointing results in majors last year for sure in the early rounds, but now he's to the quarterfinals. So this is not early rounds. And he's definitely got more experience than Lehechka. And he's got, I would say he's the favorite for sure to come out of the top half. And Djokovic is the absolute favorite to come out of the bottom half. I just did a reaction to his destruction of Alex de Minaur in the 4th round. That was incredible. So go watch that if you haven't already. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into the quarterfinal matchups. We'll put them here. We've got Karen Khachanov versus Sebastian Korda first up. And the head-to-head is actually 2-1 for Korda. They're playing in the quarterfinals. So they had that mess of a match. I don't know if you remember at Wimbledon, I think 2021, where it was like just neither guy could serve. I think they both got broken like a zillion times or also couldn't break. It was just like a very sloppy, tense and nervy match. So yeah, that was not the highest level, but they both can play super well, obviously, and they're playing well because they're in the quarterfinals. So I'm expecting a better match than that. But with their head-to-head, I'm just looking at one quick thing here in the U.S. Open. Yeah. So they're in their head-to-head. Korda has the last 2 matches. Khachanov won that messy one at Wimbledon. And they've both been playing well coming into this. Obviously, Korda took out Medvedev. He's just had a great run here in Australia, but Khachanov played well at the US Open last year. He made the semifinalist, so I would say he's got more experience in that at this stage of a tournament for sure. He just also has more experience in general, but with the flatter balls, Sebastian Korda seems like one of the players who has been handling it the best out of anyone, playing from within the baseline as much as he can, coming forward like a boss. So I'm kind of leaning towards Korda in this matchup because Khachanov uses a lot of spin on his forehand, obviously, and the game style that he's bringing, I don't think plays as well in these conditions. Obviously, it's going to be super close, I would assume, and both guys can win. It wouldn't shock me if Khachanov won at all, but if I'm going to make a prediction, I'm going to go with Korda in definitely 4 or 5 sets. But it should be an interesting one. I don't really know how to like make a game plan for this. I think, if Korda can stay on the front foot, Hachanov's defending is not his number one strength. He wants to be blasting from on top of the baseline as well. So we'll see. We'll see who can win that baseline front foot battle. But it's gonna be interesting. I'm gonna go with Korda in that prediction there. Interesting matchup in the second quarterfinal. Tsitsipas versus Yuri Lehechka. Yuri Lehechka beat Felix Auger-Aliassime. Tsitsipas has been rolling. He's been playing well. He's been playing confidently. So Tsitsipas beat Sinner in 5 sets. Lehechka beat Felix Auger-Aliassime in 4 sets. So coming into this, Tsitsipas is the better player. Let's just say that. Tsitsipas is the higher capacity player. But Lehechka is a guy who's like a shot maker, I feel like. He can play terrible tennis, but he can play amazing tennis. And he served very well against Felix, and he's a shot maker. So I'm wondering if he starts pulling out these shots and plays great defense and is passing Tsitsipas a lot, can he rattle Tsitsipas with his level and get Tsitsipas in his head and then get Tsitsipas playing bad like he did a lot of times last year in these bigger moments and where Tsitsipas has lost to lower ranked players later on in tournaments, like Holger Rune in the final of Stockholm, Coric, the final of Cincinnati, a number of other matches last year. So Tsitsipas is the favorite for sure, but we'll see if Yuri can rattle Stefanos. But I do think Stefanos' just all-court game kind of limits errors. When he's coming forward, he's so dominant on a first serve forehand. But if Yuri serves like he did against Felix, Tsitsipas' return is going to have to be good to have it go smooth for him. So I'm leaning Tsitsipas. I'm predicting Tsitsipas to win, but there's a reason Yuri Lehechka is in the quarterfinals. It's not because he just played good once. He's been playing a great tournament, playing a really good brand of tennis, and I think that's a real challenge for Tsitsipas, but he's already had some others. He already had to go through Sinner in 5 sets, so Tsitsipas should be up for the challenge, and I'm taking Tsitsipas in that. So on the top half, my semifinal prediction is Korda. I'm going Korda and Tsitsipas to the semifinals. What do you think? What do you think about that? Rublev versus Djokovic. This is probably the best quarterfinal there is. The highest seeds. It's the only one that was predicted from before the tournament started. So the two top seeds in that quarter, Djokovic 4, Rublev 5. I don't know, to be honest, how Rublev makes this tough. I've talked to Rublev in the past, and he says when he plays players who obviously, and I've said this before many times on the channel, but when he plays players like Djokovic who don't miss and who keep the ball on the court, Rublev dials down his aggression so that he won't miss and that he doesn't beat himself. Djokovic is obviously the guy that can make players beat himself. He does that so often. But we saw against de Minaur that Djokovic was hitting through this court amazingly well, playing with high power on both wings and just looking clinical. So if his hamstring isn't bothering him, it's going to be tough, I think. If Djokovic brings his A game like he did against de Minaur, I don't really know where Rublev is going to hurt him because his serve isn't, it's bigger. He's worked on his serve. He has dialed it up, but it's still not the type of serve where he's going to be getting a free point every game, I don't think. So the percentage of free points or unreturned serves or next ball winners is huge, and it's a huge stat. And if you can't get free points like that, like 1 or 2 a game, it's so hard to hang with Djokovic over 5 sets. So Rublev, if Djokovic comes in with his B or C game and his hamstrings acting up and he's not getting balls deep like with consistency like he was against de Minaur, then I think it could get really interesting if Rublev can be on the front foot. I almost think Rublev just has to go for broke. Just try to be as ultra aggressive as he can. Just go for returns, try and get him as deep as possible. Really batter Djokovic off that baseline. If he can do that, then I think then it gets interesting. But if Djokovic can sit on the baseline and make Rublev run and use his insane ability to pick up shots and redirect from the baseline, then I think Rublev's in serious trouble and it could go quick. But we'll see. You got to believe in Rublev. He's 25 now. He's in a quarterfinal. He's 0-6 in major quarterfinals. So I think he's trying to go through it here. He has beaten Djokovic before. He beat him in Serbia on the clay. Djokovic was still coming back from his time off, and he basically gassed out. I think it was a bagel third set, so not a really good litmus test. They played at the indoors at the ATP Finals, and Djokovic beat him pretty routinely. So we'll see. I think it's a very uphill battle for Rublev. Djokovic is my prediction to make it through, probably in 3 or 4. Then the last quarterfinal matchup, the two Americans, Ben Shelton versus Tommy Paul. Ben Shelton beat fellow American JJ Wolf. It's the tournament of the Americans in the fourth round in a crazy 5-set match in a back and forth battle. So he's just flying high. I mean, Ben Shelton, he's like the young kid on the block right now. Through to the quarterfinals. It's crazy how far his rankings gone up in the last 4 months. It's unbelievable. And he's huge. He plays big tennis. He's 6'4". He can absolutely pound his serve as big as it gets, basically. So that's where obviously he's going to be dangerous. Tommy Paul, though, came through Roberto Bautista Agut. I think it's the 6th or 7th Spanish player he's beaten in the last 3 months. Tommy Paul is the absolute king of Spain. And I think in this matchup, he's got more experience. Well, he does have more experience. And Tommy Paul can play the game in a number of different ways. He can obviously hit pretty big from the baseline, but he can also slice and dice and really be smart with his tactics to get a player like Ben Shelton, who at this point in his career is a bit more one-dimensional. So I think with Brad Stein, Tommy Paul's coach, they are going to cook up a game plan that is going to make Ben be uncomfortable and play tennis in the way he doesn't want to play. So that'll be interesting. To be fair, I watched about half the match yesterday with JJ Wolf, but I don't know Ben's game inside and out. So it's going to be interesting to see how Tommy plays him. And it's just going to be an interesting match in general, in my opinion. So I'm leaning Tommy Paul on that to make the semifinals to play Djokovic. So to recap, my predictions for the men's quarterfinals are Sebastian Korda taking out Karen Khachanov probably in 4 or 5. Tsitsipas taking out Lehechka in 3 or 4. Could be a big test, though. I'm not overlooking Lehechka. He's playing dangerous tennis. I'm taking Djokovic over Rublev in 3 or 4. I got to see something from Rublev to think that it's going to get really interesting. I don't know yet, but I'm seriously, based on what Djokovic played in round 4, I'm taking him very confidently over Rublev. And then I'm taking Tommy Paul, T-Pain over Ben Shelton in the Battle of the Americans. So let's see what goes down. Thanks for being here, for watching The Slice. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you after the quarterfinals are done. Karina Mustafa will be checking in with the women's quarterfinal matchups, and so check that out. Leave her a like, follow her on her channel or on her channels, and we will see you after the quarterfinals are done. May the best men and women win.